Welcome to Popternative, where we dive into topical discussions from the worlds of pop culture, social media, and sports. Here is your host, Peter Remoliotis, aka PD Beats.
Hello and welcome to the Popternative podcast here on Blab. I'm your host as always, Peter Remoliotis, and on Twitter I go as PD Beats. This is part 2 of our music panels we have in March. We had, Rody Walker from Protest the Hero and Theo from Gob last week and Mikey from Skylar Drive, but we have part 2. We have a really cool panel. I'm really excited. I'm just going to introduce everyone quickly. We have lead singer of the pop rock band Cartel. We have Will Pugh. Will, welcome to the show, man.
How you doing, man?
Pretty good. I'm really excited to have you on. Thank you for doing this.
Of course, yeah. This is fun.
And we have a guitarist for a pop punk band from Canada, from Oakville, Ontario specifically. We have Andrew Eichinger. Andrew, welcome to the show.
How's it going?
Pretty good. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me, man.
No problem. And last but not least, of course, we have a good buddy of mine. He also, does more like a radio show than a podcast. But he does, Rock the Walls on Adobe Radio. We have Patrick Walford. Patrick, welcome to the show, man.
Hey guys, what's up? Thanks for having me, Petey.
No problem. So this is like time where I just get you guys to do a little brief introduction before we get into the meat and potatoes of the episode. So Will, let's start with you. A little intro to our viewers.
Yeah, I'm in a band called Cartel, and that's pretty much what you would probably know me from. But I produce records full time, write maybe like 20% of my time, if that much. And that's really kind of me. Avid music follower, avid golfer, which is weird for most people probably. And I think that's about the most interesting thing. Oh, I did have a baby that she'll be 4 weeks old in about 4.5 hours. So.
Oh, congrats!
Yeah, so that's my life now.
Andrew, what about you?
Andrew, I'm from Oakville, just outside of Toronto, playing Seaway. Trying to do that right now, trying to do the full-time band thing, working side jobs when I can, and that's basically my life right now. So, love hockey, love sports. Yeah, that's basically it.
I see that jersey in the background.
Yeah, the Leafs jersey.
Yeah.
I have way too many jerseys.
Pat, what about you, buddy?
So I do a show called Rock the Walls. It's something I started out in college, and it was one of those things where, like, when I first started doing it, I had never been on the radio before. I was pretty terrible, but I kept at it for about 2 years, and then when I was about to graduate college, I sent it a demo to Adobe Radio, and I've been doing my show on there for a little bit over 5 years at this point. So I basically interview any kind of like bands, more or less. I mean, recently I interviewed The Cult, but it's mostly like a mix of like a metalcore, hardcore, pop punk bands within that realm. I know I interviewed Andrew and Ryan a little bit earlier, or I guess it was about a year ago now. So yeah, I just keep busy with that, and then as well on the side, I work down at an airport in downtown Toronto in like a fare control tower, since there's a ferry that takes cars across from each side, and I just need to make sure that like everyone coming across is kind of like legit and whatnot.
Cool. Well, I think we lost Pat. I don't really. Do you guys see his box?
Nope.
I don't see it anymore.
Yeah. Well. Yeah.
He probably has Comcast.
Yeah. But yeah, no. Hopefully he calls back in. But yeah, the one thing like that I really wanted to talk about, what I find really interesting is, Will, Chroma came out in 2005, correct?
Yeah, it was a hot minute ago. Sorry, I had to get my power charger for my laptop here.
Yeah, no problem. But
I'm still listening though.
Yeah, so that's a record that came out quite a long time ago, correct? 2005.
Yeah, we're rocking almost 11 years at this point.
Yeah, and that's crazy. It makes me feel kind of old. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, tell me about it, man.
But very very quickly, you know, the internet's providing, you know, a library of like archives over the past, like there's a lot of, you know, access to music over the years, right? Like with the internet. And I just find that interesting that, you know, people will always be able to access Chroma or any music, no matter how long it's been, right? So what do you think about this whole concept of social media, YouTube, and all this other stuff as kind of like an archive of music from, you know, the past and present?
I think it's pretty cool. I mean, the fact that, you know, 20 years from now, you know, somebody could possibly listen to our band if, you know, I don't know how the hell they would figure that out, but they'd be able to go back and check it out. It's pretty sweet because, I mean, you see a lot of kids now, like, really being able to easily go back and listen to the classics, where as before it was harder because you had to have the physical record or, you know, own it. So, I mean, there's that side of it that's pretty cool. But, I mean, you know, as a musician and someone who actually makes a living from that, it's also a double-edged sword where one side is way sharper than the other.
Andrew, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I agree. It's very cool. Like when I guess when you were just saying Chroma came in like 2005, like I was 13, so I was just starting to get into all of that stuff. And just between like then and now, like the internet was around back then, obviously, but I wasn't utilizing it the way that you can utilize it today, obviously. So it's cool how you can just go back and check out any band from history right now, but it's also kind of weird because then you have all these people that are like, oh yeah, like I'm the biggest fan of this band from like the 70s or the 80s or whatever, but it's just so easily accessible that I don't know, I feel like it was more of a novelty before, and now it's kind of just like open to everybody, which is good, but it has its pros and cons, I guess.
Yeah, and nostalgia is a powerful thing because, Pat, you know, you and I both know that we have one of our favorite bands. We have a mutual favorite band in Motion City Soundtrack. That's one of our favorite bands of all time. And, you know, the whole, you know, nostalgia thing and, you know, like just as like, you know, an icebreaker, I just love the fact that, you know, you have a lot of different platforms now to always have access to the music and have access to discover as well, right, Pat?
Oh yeah, 100%. It's really cool too to be able to, as a radio show host, be able to actually go into these albums and pick songs that I think that the listeners out there would like the most, and not necessarily the singles. With what I do, I mean, I'm able to have full control of that. So, I mean, sometimes for example, if I interview a band, I'll get them just to choose the songs that they want their listeners to kind of hear when they're tuning in for the interview. I mean, to be able to go back and discover bands that maybe you missed, or, you know, now, I mean, bands are reuniting at a pretty rapid rate that, you know, haven't played shows in 15, 20 years. Sometimes it's good to be able to go back and kind of see where the bands are today and how they were kind of influenced by those bands, you know what I mean? Because it's pretty apparent when you listen to some of these bands where, you know, they really drew inspiration from other riffs and whatnot.
Yeah, that's an interesting point because, Andrew, I think you can kind of agree, you know, that there are a lot of bands of, you know, the Seaway generation that are up and coming, of like the pop punk, the post-hardcore, bands like Cartel, mostly Soundtrack. One can make an argument that those are, you know, key cornerstone bands in terms of influences, right, of that new genre of music.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like it's a little different now, but it's basically the same shit. It's just coming back, you know. But yeah, I guess the internet definitely has a lot to do with that, and it's great.
Mm-hmm. And Will, what do you think about this? You know, seeing, you know, bands that are kind of, you know, doing similar stuff than what Cartel does, but kind of putting their own twist on it, and kind of, what do you think about, you know, the state of like pop punk and pop rock in this day and age?
It's cool, man. You know, to talk to bands or like, you know, just randomly meet them somehow, especially, you know, Twitter obviously helps. And then hear them talk about, you know, oh yeah, you know, you guys were a huge influence, and it's like, well, I don't really hear that in your music, but that's sweet. You know, we did the same thing with like Newfound Glory and Saves the Day and all that, you know, sort of late 90s where they started. That was when I started getting into this style of music. So to have that sort of come back around is really, really cool. And I think nowadays, I mean, there's definitely a lot of stuff you could hear. I would say, like, if there's one critique I have, it's sort of derivative of each other rather than really trying to break new boundaries, which is stuff I'm always interested to see. Is, people kind of pushing it and like bringing in other things. But I mean, just from having done it for over a decade, man, it's pretty hard to kind of reinvent the wheel of pop punk or, some of these genres. I feel like it's so niche that, it's, for it to evolve is for it to kind of betray itself a little bit. And that's kind of, the thing where, you see a lot of bands kind of bridge the gaps between, post-hardcore, hardcore, and pop punk, where, you have singing and then like hardcore breakdowns and stuff like that. That's kind of where it's more of a merging of sounds rather than a new genre being produced by, which is cool. I mean, I think it's healthy. I mean, bands like State Champs, Neck Deep, and all these other people, they're kind of popping off. Like, I know those guys well. The Good People, and they play well live, and they really love their fans. They're doing it right, and I couldn't be happier for them. And I mean, All Time Low, look at them. I mean, they're huge. I mean, they're killing it. But yet, don't have any sort of terrestrial radio success. Traditional means of success. People would normally associate with music and they make a lot more money than bands with traditional success. Not that that's the end all be all, but the money is obviously a indicator of their success with their fans.
Pat, I want to. That's a pretty interesting segue to what I was going to ask Pat, because Pat, you're interviewing a lot of these bands that Will spoke about over the past couple of years. Whether pop punk or pop rock, screamo. What is it like? What do you see in terms of how these bands are portraying themselves in terms of trying to maybe make a new sound for themselves, or trying to, I don't know if duplicate's the right word, but kind of maybe pay homage, like pay tribute to old. Like, what do you think about that? What do you get from that when you ask them about their sound and their journey as a band?
Yeah, I know a lot too. At least over these past couple of years, especially, I think that when you look at bands like Seaway, Knuckle Puck, Neck Deep, State Champs, the list goes on and on. Real Friends would be another band. These are real grassroots bands in the sense that these guys were all local bands before they became into the touring, where they're now touring full time and able to, tour all over the world pretty much most of the year. So, I mean, in terms of like what I asked them, I just think it's interesting what a lot of these bands are writing about. A lot of the time it's relationships, but other times it's a bit, kind of their take on the road and all the different ways that they kind of handle things. So, I mean, as far as, in my opinion, personally about pop punk, I think that there's kind of mention, but then there is a number of bands that I really feel are trying to kind of duplicate like the 5 Seconds of Summer kind of vibe to their music, where it's more so they're a boy band, but they're just happen to be playing, their instruments and whatnot. I don't know if that's really in particular like the Warped Tour pop punk scene, but I've started to see a lot more of those kind of like pop rock bands trying to brand themselves as pop punk to kind of get that crowd. You know what I mean? I'm
really happy that you brought up 5 Seconds of Summer, because Chris Thong, who plays bass in Like Pacific, which is another band, a really good up and coming pop band from the Toronto area. I believe they're on Pure Noise too, right, Andrew?
Yeah.
We were talking about 5 Seconds of Summer like 2 years ago when that song She Looks Perfect, She Looks So Perfect came out, and we were like, there were some like All American Rejects vibes in there. Like, it wasn't like this was a band that got a lot of hate of being, they toured in one direction, it's another boy band. But I've seen like videos of them, and some of their songs are catchy. Like, their drummer is a very good drummer, in my opinion. There might be a lot of people, like, I play drums most of my life. He's a really good drummer. So I find that interesting. And, Will, you mentioned State Champs. They got a bunch of flack for doing some shows with 5 Seconds of Summer in the UK. That just bothers me because, you know, it's a good move for the band, and it's not. I don't understand where, you know, the critique came. I mean, all three of you guys would ask this question: Would pop punk fans be upset about 5 Seconds of Summer if they, you know, would they be okay with 5 Seconds of Summer if they weren't like associated with like One Direction? Because I feel like that was the thing, right? They toured with One Direction. They got that boy band label, right? Will, like, do you know what I mean? Kind of.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough line to walk. I mean, because everybody, I think a lot of the fans that would be into, you know, or that are into, you know, this scene and like, you know, make it, or, you know, part of their community, it's almost like you have to go through, you know, like a proving ground, sort of like you need to come through the scene in order to be respected. And even then, I mean, like All Time Low did it just as, you know, grassroots as anybody can do it. And then they still catch a bunch of hell because it's like, oh, they're popular and blah, 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 blah. And I think, you know, there's that like little bit of, I mean, jealousy, I guess. They don't want their bands to get big, where it's like, you know, the friend at school that is like the popular girl. They might be like, oh, she's, you know, she sucks, but, you know, now she's into All Time Low, and now I can't like him because she likes him because she also likes One Direction. It's, you know, the 5 Seconds of Summer thing is kind of the same deal. I mean, yeah, they're from Australia, so they didn't really have a chance to come through the scene here as, you know, I guess, you know, Tonight Alive is doing it, but
That's a wicked band.
yeah, I mean, you know, they're coming up just the way that everybody else, you know, traditionally does. But, you know, I don't really like 5 Seconds of Summer just because I've moved on from that, you know, sort of pop. Like, I mean, I get it. Like, it's good. It's catchy. But, you know, been there, done that. I'm more into things that are going to make me try to figure out how the hell they're doing it versus like, oh, yeah, cool, you know. But I enjoy it on, like, a surface level. It's sweet, and I totally understand why, you know, when you're 14, 15 years old and, like, get a guitar and want to write some catchy songs, like, why would be sick. But yeah, I don't know. I think, yeah, the One Direction thing probably does kind of beef them pretty hard with most people.
Yeah. And Andrew, you know, Seaway is a band that, you know, before you guys were signed, was a band, you know, that was associated in terms of like for fans of, you know, I heard people compare you guys, you know, Stories So Far, a little bit of Transit in there as well, Man Overboard, that kind of wave of pop punk bands. But the one thing that I realized is, you know, over the years listening to you, there's a little bit of a there are some Canadian pop punk bands in there that I think have a little bit of influence. Like, sometimes I listen to the instrumental parts of songs, and I feel like, you know, oh, this sounds like Not By Choice. Andrew, remember Not By Choice?
Yeah.
Like that band ripped. That band was so good.
Yeah, they had like 3 singles, and every single was the exact same guitar riff.
That's sick.
Yeah, but they were. I enjoyed them. I enjoyed them.
Oh yeah, me too. They were great. But no, I agree with you though. Like, I feel like that's where we take most of our influences. Like, because when we were growing up, it was all like Sum 41, obviously Blink.
Yeah.
But then also like Gob, who were kind of only big in Canada. Like, I talk to people that know them in the States, but it's
We just had Theo, we had Theo on the show last week, and I'm not gonna lie to you.
He's crazy.
That was kind of a little bit of a mistake.
Really?
Oh, guys, that was the longest editing I've had to do in a while.
That's hilarious. Yeah, and then like we toured with them last fall.
Yeah,
last fall, and so that was great because they were, they were a big influence to us. But I agree with you because bands like Gob and Sum 41 are on, like, I would say the poppier side of pop punk, and that's what I like. Like, I think 5 Seconds of Summer is great because I just love good melodies and good songs, catchy songs. That's what we try to do.
Yeah.
I feel like they're all the like bigger bands in pop punk now, in this new wave, they have catchy songs, but I feel like I don't know. I just think that we try to go to like the more pop side of things, but that's just what I prefer.
I mentioned Pat. Like Pat and I like Motion City Soundtrack. That's our mutual. Andrew and I always talk about Iron Chic. That's also a rad band.
Yeah, they're sick.
But
I
okay.
also love Motion City though.
Yeah, Motion City is. I've yet to see Motion City live. That's a band I really
Oh
want.
man.
I had tickets to go see
Dude,
them on the Panic at the Disco tour, like the Honda Civic tour.
Oh no.
With like it was like Phantom Planet and the Hush sound, and I got sick and I couldn't go. I had my tickets and everything, but I did. Another really cool thing is I found that so Gob the Seaway, kind of like the older pop punk band with like the new that's something that like has been like I've seen before with tours. You know what I mean? Like for example, there was a Boys Like Girls Good Charlotte tour back in the day that I went to, and I wasn't sure about that. I was like, I don't know how that's gonna work. And they had Good Charlotte like main support for Boys Like Girls. And I understand that at the time, Boys Like Girls was a very popular band, but this is Good Charlotte. Like,
Yeah,
Leon
that's
and
crazy.
Hopeless was one of my favorite records of all time. And I thought it weird, but it worked. So, Pat, my question to you is you're interviewing, a lot of bands. And one band, well, you mentioned Tonight Live, but another band that's doing really cool things is Paris, is another really cool band. Do you agree with those mixed lineups, Pat, that kind of complement each other and that kind of, have like the past and present bands that kind of riff off each other?
Yeah, I definitely think so for sure. And I honestly think that like going back to State Champs, for example, like I can't believe a band like them or Paris would catch flack for getting the opportunity to go on a big tour. I think it's ridiculous, and if you're a fan of a band and you get mad that they get a chance to go on a big tour, that could be very beneficial to their careers. I don't think you're like truly a fan of their music. So I mean, I think Paris being on that Fall Out Boy tour, I think Paris is just kind of getting into that radio play just over these past couple of months. I mean, you saw the exact same thing with Echo Smith. Right after they did Warped Tour in 2014, they started to get radio play for cool kids. And like, these are young, hardworking bands. I mean, Paris has been at it for a really long time. A lot of people just think they popped out of nowhere in 2014 when they released White Noise, but they're a band who's been working hard and going hard, just promoting their music. I mean, they've followed Warped Tour and they've done Warped Tour a number of times, so I think they're very deserving of that. And I mean, a good example as well would be from the heavy side of music of Mice and Men opportunity to tour with Slipknot and Marilyn Manson. I mean, how could you blame the band for getting the opportunity to do stuff like that? So I mean, I'm sure both of you guys. I mean, Seaway going on tour with the band like Bayside, and then like 4 Years Strong, and having Alan produce your record. So like, Will, you going on tour with some of these bigger bands like back in the mid 2000s? It's just got to be pretty surreal kind of in a way, just to kind of see how big these bands are and just how down to earth they really are at the end of the day.
What were some of the bands, Will, that you guys toured with that were kind of, because you guys did a few headline tours, but when you were like main support or opening, what were some of the tours? What was the tour circuit like for you guys at the time? Like when Chroma came out?
So we did like Acceptance, which wasn't a giant tour, but like, the bands on it, that was if people could look at that lineup, it's just ridiculous.
What was the lineup?
Well, so the opening band only did half of it, and then we had to get another opening band. So it was Acceptance headlining, The Receiving and the Sirens direct support, us, and then Augustana right below us.
Oh.
And then Panic at the Disco actually opened that tour. That was the first tour they ever did. And then they left and went on the Fusion tour with Fall Out Boy, and I think it was Fall Out Boy, Starting Line, Motion City, and somebody else. And then Panic was opening. And then Paramore jumped on when Panic at the Disco dropped off. So we were like, well, the opening slot had the magic touch.
Were you guys direct support for that tour?
No, we were third support.
Okay.
So we were 3 of 5.
Mm-hmm.
So that was crazy. And then we did Starting Line, which was Gatsby's, American Dream, Copeland. Copeland was direct support on that. And then us. And then we did Newfound Glory early November that fall. So we had a good, solid, like calendar year in '06. It was pretty hardcore. And then Warped Tour, obviously. But after that, we kind of went into the headline circuit, and I think the only support we did after that was Newfound Glory and Mayday Parade off cycle. But I mean, Newfound Glory is that band for me that, you know, like that's what got me into playing pop punk, and they're the nicest dudes on the planet. And they, you know, I would consider them friends now, and they just kind of like took us under their wing and really showed us like, hey, don't be dicks. That was pretty much like, not that we were dicks, but just by their example, it's like, yeah, they don't have any reason to think we're cool.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I was kind of easy with some of the questions that I asked you guys. So now we're going to get into the not so easy stuff. And, you know, so Pat knows this. I don't know, Andrew, if you know this, but I used to be a concert promoter.
In Ottawa, right?
Yeah, in Ottawa. Yeah. I was actually the first promoter to bring state champs into Canada.
That's cool.
Uh-oh.
I can't hear him.
Yeah, we lost audio. Yeah, on you.
Uh-oh. Oh, the Leafs game's on in the background, and I think the Islanders just scored a squeaker over the goal line.
I did. It's 3-2.
Damn. Tank for Matthews, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Will, do you guys have any tour plans coming up?
No, man, we're just kind of taking it easy. Like, we've all got, you know, with the baby, gonna take at least, you know, a solid 6 to 9 months just to chill. And then I've got a pretty full production schedule right now. So, yeah, just kind of chilling on that for a while. I mean, the Chroma tour is pretty big for us, just to kind of get back out there and do it. But it was,
for sure.
It was really good. We had a great time, great experience. So just kind of riding on that for a minute.
Did that tour come to Toronto?
No, we didn't do Canada.
Driver Friendly was on that tour, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they opened.
Yeah,
they're awesome.
Yeah, we toured with them 2 summers ago. They're sick dudes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's crazy. Like, 2 of the guys are like getting their doctorates.
Oh yeah.
Like one, I guess both in psychology, I think. But yeah, it's nuts. Like those dudes, I'm like, well, so you're not going to be in a band in a couple years when you're actually making real money.
Exactly.
it's pretty funny. But they're great dudes. We had a good time.
That's cool.
That's like, man, I interviewed the band Soilwork like 5 or 6 months ago, and their guitarist is like a surgeon back at home, like full-time surgeon. But anytime he needs to go on tour, they're completely like accepting of it. That was pretty crazy.
Yeah. That's sweet.
Sorry, guys.
I think we got you back.
You got me back?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So something happened with my mic. So, yeah. Whatever. No, you guys did good. It's obviously not going to sound as good, but we lost Pat again. I don't know. What is that? You know what? There's never a dull moment, you know, live shows. My question was...
No.
I'm gonna say right now, there's a lot of, you know, talk and heat about the whole concert promotions versus local bands and bands and all that. You know what I mean? In terms of, you know, the concert promoters, you know, the cuts, the ticket sales, selling tickets. I look at it more as I did it as a job, and I did care about my local bands, and I always paid local bands. I never not paid local bands, even when there was a loss. I do sometimes, in my opinion, and people can disagree, take offense sometimes when there are bands that post quote-unquote ignorant posts saying that, oh, the promoter does nothing. Because I don't agree with that. I mean, Andrew, you know, like as you said, you know, you guys were a local band before you were signed. You dealt with a lot of promoters. There's some heat. There are a lot of promoters out there that aren't that good, but there are promoters that really care and that do good things. I don't think it's, you know, I don't know. What do you think about that whole thing? You know, I think I don't know. I just found it to be something interesting to talk about. And, with the advent of social media, it's, a lot easier to, promote music these days. And
Yeah, there's definitely like a mix of both. There's good promoters everywhere and bad promoters everywhere. The thing with like selling tickets and that kind of thing, I always see people have on Facebook or whatever posting like promoters who sell tickets or make bands sell tickets suck and all that, but like I feel like everybody had to do that. Like we had to do that a ton. It's just kind of like shut up and just do it, and you'll eventually get to where you want to go. Also, yeah, like we were lucky because we grew up right around Toronto, which is like probably the biggest music scene in Canada because it's the biggest city. So we've always been lucky enough to have good promoters like Travis Porter. I'm sure you know.
Yeah.
He's been like behind us since we started, which is great. So we've been lucky with that. But there definitely was this guy in Toronto who, when we started out, was like booking shows for us, and then like I just remember some shady stuff happened where he'd be like, we got another offer to do a show, and he's like, if you do that show, you'll never play another Toronto show again. And we were just like, no. And then he eventually left Toronto. But
that happens a lot, and I think I never was a fan of that. Kind of using a big show or threats to kind of, as the promoter, gain leverage. You know what I mean, Will?
It kind of sucks. But I feel like there are a lot of good promoters who just want to see the local bands do well and tour and move on from the local scene, which I think is happening in Toronto right now. So that's cool.
Andrew, have you ever worked with Dave Boucher in Montreal?
Only when our hardcore band played there like 5 years ago, maybe. Never for Seaway.
Who was your hardcore band?
We were called Rage Brigade.
That sounds really familiar.
Yeah, it's pretty stupid band, but we went to Montreal a few times, which is cool.
You told me you're coming there. You guys are coming his way soon, like in spring or spring.
Oh yeah, in the summer, yeah.
I'm just letting you know right now. And Pat, I think you know of Dave Boucher. I don't know, Will, if you guys ever worked with him in Montreal at Sense of Enterprise, but this in my opinion is like the best promoter out there. Not only, let alone Canada, but one of the nicest. Like, this is a guy that was thanked in August for his Reds record for being like their favorite promoter.
That's cool. I've heard good things about him. Yeah.
And Andrew, it's like I love what you said, because it's like he does like that's him. He cares about the bands. You know what I mean? He cares about the bands. He loves their music. He wants them to keep coming back. He wants the retention rate, and I think that's interesting. But Pat, you kind of cut out a little bit, but we're just having the promoter conversation. And I know you have a lot to say about that type of stuff, the band versus promoter type thing. But what do you think about, I'm not saying by any means that, the promoters are always good and we're taking all the risks, but like there are risks involved, like with costs, that I think that kind of get left hung out to dry, in my opinion, that like a lot of local bands don't realize. I think, yeah. Well, what do you think about that, though? Like, the risks?
Yeah, I mean, we've had several encounters where, promoters, for one reason or the other, the show didn't sell well, whether it's, the promoter didn't really do a good job, or maybe they thought that, just the name alone would sell, some tickets. Who knows? I mean, and more recently than you might think that's happened. And, you kind of just got to give people some grace. I mean, if somebody has a history of being a dick, then that's one thing, and that'll come back around on them, because they'll never, as soon as they work with somebody with a real agent, they'll be like, all right, you're never getting any of our bands again. But, I've never really had any run-ins with promoters. I mean, there's definitely been a few shitty ones, but you just kind of let it go. The local scene, we were coming up, we really only dealt with one venue that actually had like a full-time promoter. Otherwise, it was just like, we knew a buddy who was the guy who booked it, a venue, and is like just for the sake of playing a show, not really like worried about ticket sales or getting paid or anything like that. And it was door split, so not a big deal. But yeah, I mean, I think bands are very well. I think just in general, society now is very quick to blame somebody else, or like make a huge deal, or like be victims and all this stuff. It's just very, because it's drama, and it's it generates headlines or interest and all this other stuff. But I don't think a lot of people really go to lengths to understand like all the different aspects of what makes a show happen, or anything happen for that matter. But obviously we're talking about shows, so it's a little bit of grace and understanding, or just some research into how things work would go a long way for people.
And we lost Pat again, but it's unfortunate. But yeah, no, I just wanted to.
Can you guys hear me now?
That's kind of weird.
Like Poltergeist.
It's the ghost of Pat. Yeah. No, we're gonna wrap it up soon, but we gotta talk about Band and Bubble, man.
Can you guys hear me now?
Oh Christ! What do you want to know, man?
I want to know everything that happened in the bubble that was not shown anywhere.
Are we? How like? Are there censor? Are there parents watching? What's the deal here?
I'm sure a lot. No, we can't. We gotta keep it PG. But like, I'm sure
PG, cool.
Some crazy stuff that happened.
Yeah, there was.
First of all, Andrew, do you know about that? The Band in the Bubble?
No, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Do you want to explain it quickly?
Yeah. So essentially, for our second album, we were tagged by MTV to do a little mini series called Band in the Bubble, which had been done before by a band in Australia, not with TV and all that. For them, it was an art like exhibit sort of thing. For this, it was MTV, and essentially we were in there for 20 days. We were recording for our second album, and it was all on live webcam 24/7, and then filmed for like a 4-part miniseries sort of thing. It ended up being kind of like, they tried to make some drama out of it, tried to have some fun with it, and like doing some stupid shit that would never happen in the studios. But overall, like I think if somebody watched the raw footage for 20 days, obviously other than when we're sleeping, they would see us having like a pretty crazy time. Like, cause we were all, at that point in time, we had been in a bus for 1.5 years. So I mean, and on tour for like 3 years. So there was no drama that was going to happen, hadn't already happened. It was kind of like a vacation. But I mean, behind the scenes stuff, I mean, dude, we had like food fights, like we were hitting golf balls out of the front doors that were like, the entire front of the thing was made of glass. I mean, we were just like ripping golf balls at $10,000 plate glass, which was funny. I mean, not, directly to it, we're trying to hit it through it, but, I mean, I'm trying to think, like, yeah, so if we're in PG land, I mean, it's not like we did anything wild. Like, there weren't strippers or any like weird stuff like that going on. But yeah, some of the weird stuff is just like we had a bomb threat that never made it on there. Yeah, like somebody in Colorado like had called in a bomb threat on us.
Well, it was Dr. Pepper was a sponsor, right?
Yeah, Dr. Pepper was the main sponsor.
Did you like drink so much Dr. Pepper that you can't drink Dr. Pepper anymore?
Dude, I actually don't drink soda, so it was kind of ironic the whole time. But they did have like they had any like larger. I think Cadbury Schweppes is like the parent company of Dr. Pepper or something like that. But
yeah.
So like Snapple was involved, so I drank a lot of Snapple. And we're from Atlanta, so Coca-Cola being from Atlanta was like our thing. Like if we were going to drink soda, we drink Coke. And our drummer Kevin, will not drink Dr. Pepper. It's Coke or nothing. Wow. And so they wouldn't allow any other beverages, like anything that wasn't like a Dr. Pepper affiliate company. They had to like block out all the labels, and we couldn't refer to it as Coke. And Kevin, would be like, oh, we need to get, if we're on camera, we can't say, yeah, you need to get some more Coke for the, the grocery run this time. It was like, we called it Atlanta water. And vodka was Russian water. Yeah. Kentucky water was whiskey. And so, but that was, we had a lot of fun. It was weird for sure for a lot of people to see it, but when you're in the moment and you're trying to, finish a record and everything, it wasn't really, it wasn't really that weird. It's just another day. There was one time where so it was Andrew, since you don't really know what it was the bubble itself was more like a giant igloo, if you can imagine.
Oh,
like
okay.
40-foot ceiling. So there was a little loft where they actually had like the bunk beds and stuff where we slept, but everything was on the bottom floor. And right out the front of it, it was on Pier 54 in New York.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
It was way down there from the main street, and they had this whole branded walkway down to the thing. I think they had like volleyball nets. It was kind of like meant you could come down there and hang out. And they had like patio chairs and everything, like chilling out right in front of the bubble. And we had been there for a few days, and people would come. We thought it was weird that people would actually come down there and bring a lunch and just sit there and hang out and watch the whole thing go down. And we're like, this is stupid. Like, what are these people doing? Like, this is a waste of time. And I forget what was happening, but somebody was like, we were bored, obviously. I think it was in between, Zach and Kenneth, our producers, were setting something up. And we're standing out there just getting lunch or something. And this dude was walking down the pier wearing just the shittiest shirt you've ever seen. And Kevin starts ripping into him. I don't know if it's Kevin. Somebody starts ripping into him like, oh, look at that stupid shirt. That guy's got to be so embarrassed walking around. He just came down here to get out of the city, And it was just kind of something you say in private. And, obviously we feel like zoo animals, so we don't care. And then, after somebody says something like that, we look out and people are laughing. And it was like, that's weird. Why are you laughing? And they're just kind of, they keep laughing, talking amongst themselves. And we're like, wait, can you hear us? And they all look at us and they're like, yeah, we can hear you. And we're like, oh shit. Because, at that point in time, we did this, you kind of start doing some inventory, what have we said before now that might, come across very poorly. I mean, we were on camera, so obviously we're not going nuts, but
that sounds really cool.
Well, we're gonna wrap it up. Unfortunately, we had a lot of technical difficulties with Pat, and I tried to. Blab is acting a bit strange, and I can't add him, put him back in, unfortunately. But very quickly, I think this would be a cool question. Will, you're a band that has been around for a long time. Andrew's in an up and coming punk. Well, Andrew, would you say up and coming? I know you're an established band, but you've only been on the label for a couple of years.
Well, I would say up and coming still for sure, because I still live in my parents' basement and I still have a job.
Chris from Headley chirped me because by accident I called Arkells an up and coming band, and that was a mistake.
Well, they're huge. Well, I mean, in the States. They might be.
He kind of backed me up and said that in a lot of different areas that is true. They're up and coming, so it wasn't that big of a deal. But Will, my question is, what advice do you have for Andrew and Seaway in terms of touring and recording? You have a lot of experience. Maybe share some nuggets of wisdom to Andrew. I don't know. Maybe that'd be something cool. What can you say about that? Any advice?
I mean, dude, I think you guys are obviously doing something right, because I spend 90% of my time with my face in a computer listening to bands I'm actually tracking. So I really don't keep my finger on the pulse of what's happening, and I've heard a lot about you guys from different people. So you're doing something right already, which is cool. But I think it's just more about patience, and some bands nail it on their first record, and not really nail it, but get popular on their first record or second record or third record, fourth. And it takes a while sometimes. And I think as long as you're growing your fan base and being cool with your fans, and trying to put out the most positive vibes you can with people you tour with, and just in general, even when it gets hard, sometimes you're tired and somebody wants your autograph, wants to chat your ear off for 15 or 20 minutes, and the last thing you want to do is talk to any living soul. having that extra little bit of patience goes a long way. Because I've had many people come up, be like, yeah, you look like you were really tired and you didn't want to do that, but you actually took 15 minutes and talked to me, and that was really cool. And I think that individual experience with fans and promoters to venue employees to label, anybody, I think that's the biggest thing. Because if people like you as a person, or like your band as people, and then like your music, as long as you can show up and play and start on time, end on time, and be cool about everything, that gets you so far. It's really not hard. But that's the biggest thing. And I think that's probably the best piece of advice. Just be cool, be chill. And that helps more than anything else in the world. And obviously, keep growing, keep trying to push yourself. But most of all, make music you actually like. Don't do something for, to get popular or because it's happening. If you don't like it, it sucks. As far as making your own stuff. So, just keep doing what you're doing, man. I think it's cool.
Cool. That's good advice, yeah, because we've always, we're around bands that have been, just kind of gone from here to here immediately. Mm-hmm. Obviously, they put in their work, but with the internet and everything, bands can just blow up nowadays. So it's we're kind of at the point where we're like, okay, we're not one of those bands. We need to just stay patient, keep writing good music, releasing good music. And I think what you said about just being cool and nice to everybody is something that we've always tried to do from the start. Because it always sucked. We've been lucky enough to tour with great bands that have brought us on tour and have been really nice to us. But I've definitely heard crazy stories of bands just being dicks to opening bands or just to anyone basically, and that just, I don't know, just automatically leaves a really bad taste in anyone's mouth and kind of ruins that band for you. So,
dude, I'm telling you, we got the Newfound Glory tour in '06, but we played a college show with them the spring of '06. The tour was in the fall, and we were in one of those weird shared dressing rooms. It was separated by a curtain, so obviously we could hear them, they could hear us. Yeah. And I think they were the ones who were like, "This is stupid," and slid the curtain. We started hanging out, and Ian, the bass player, we hung out with him a good bit. And by the end of that, I guess he was kind of the guy who never really piped in as far as what bands were on tour. But we just, we weren't trying to do anything. We hadn't even submitted for a tour. We didn't know they were touring. It's just kind of chilling. And he told Chad at the end of that show, "Is I don't care who's on the tour in the fall, make sure it's Cartel." We didn't get that because we didn't get that tour because we were starting to do well. I think we only sold maybe 5,000-10,000 records at the point we played that show with them. Yeah. But it was just from being cool. And I would argue that tour in the fall of '06, post Warped Tour, probably the biggest factor is kind of launching from there. And it was simply because the bass player liked us, Yeah,
and that's really cool.
Yeah, it's kind of being in the right place at the right time, being able to do your thing, because you never know when that one time where you show up, you're cool, you play a good show, you get off on time, you're nice to everybody, when that one person who's there is the one who can kind of, be the catalyst for your band to jump off from there.
I agree. Our first big or kind of real tour that wasn't a DIY tour was with Bayside, and it was a C Market Bayside tour.
In the States,
yeah, it was just Northeast, very small. Actually, we had done one almost full US before, but it was just this was our first big tour, and so we were scared shitless, super nervous because it was Bayside, and obviously we knew that they had been around for a while. We were big fans, but they were just immediate. I don't know how we got on that tour, but it was us, I'm the Avalanche, and Bayside. So we were just completely the other band out. But those are two great bands to do a first big tour with because they've been around for forever, and they were both super open, super nice. And I feel we learned a lot on that particular tour, which kind of just set the tone for what kind of band we were going to be, which is being cool, being respectful, and just being a good band. Even if it has nothing to do with music, just being a decent band. And
oh yeah,
those bands it was cool to like learn a lot from them pretty early on for us. Kind of like levels you out.
Oh, 100. Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly how it works.
Well, I think we're going to wrap it up. You know, all I'm going to say very quickly is I listen to Cartel and Seaway a lot, and it's pretty awesome. You know, like, you know, I listened to Seaway a lot before, you know, Andrew and I became friends. So it's pretty awesome, man, that you know, the music you guys are making, I agree, like, keep it going, because it's a good sound. It's a sound that, you know, and I just find there was a wave where, like, you know, there were a lot of bands that sounded like this, like Story So Far was a wicked band, and then all these new bands came in, and it sounded very similar to the Story So Far, in my opinion, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's, you know, the vocals or, you know, the guitar riffs, right? And there's a unique thing about Seaway. I think it's the vocals, but I think it's the riffs. And I think you hit it on point with, like, the poppy, melodic, you know, Simple Plan, Not by Choicey kind of riff. Like, there is that in there for sure, you know, like. And,
yeah, that's what we tried to do, is kind of combine those two.
And you're the riff guy, right? Because you're one of the guitarists, right?
Yeah.
Are you the riff guy, or are you more like rhythm and?
Well, I mean, I do all the lead stuff live, but Patrick and I, the other guitarists, pretty much write everything in terms of like guitars and lyrics and melodies and all that kind of stuff. So.
And Will, one really cool thing too, and I want, like, in one word, how would you describe having Lucky Street on a Madden football game? Because that's pretty cool.
Surreal. Yeah, because I definitely have played Madden many years before that, and hear those songs. I discovered some bands that way, and then to
we talked about that last week. Isn't that a really cool way of finding music, like through video games? Like, Andrew, the Tony Hawk video games, like, those soundtracks were the best.
Yeah, even Gob, they were on like NHL 2005 or something.
That's the Hero was on NHL. Like, Melancholy, I didn't know about them until, like, Tony Hawk, and I was just like, this band is unreal, and they became, like, one of my favorites. But answer.
I was gonna say, when we toured with Gob, there was, like, at one show out east, I think in like Fredericton, some kid came up to, like, their merch table with a copy of NHL 05 and, like, got them to sign it, and they were just like, yeah, whatever. Like,
that's awesome, though.
Oh, it is, yeah. I'm just sure it's, like, followed them.
No, I mean, like Theo spoke about last week, he even actually had to go into EA to record some tracks, and they did some, like, live, like, studio recordings.
That's sick.
Which I think is pretty cool. But yeah, no, I just like the fact, Will, that, you know, they, like, Lucky Street was that was a banger of a song. That was a fast-paced, energetic song, and it went really well, right? And
I killed it.
Yeah. How did that, very quickly, how did that happen? Like, that was obviously for your management or your public. Like, how did that happen? What's the process of that? Like, they're like, hey, we like Lucky Street, we want to put it on? Like, just curious.
I'm not sure exactly how it went down, like, on their end, but I know the label was, like, Epic Records was very instrumental in that happening, which I'm very happy we were on that version, because I think we did a lot of press around it when it came out. It was like Taking Back Sunday, Rise Against, and I think Alkaline Trio was on it too, but those bands but so we got to do, like, press junkets and, like, some combined stuff, those bands, which we hadn't met Taking Back Sunday or Rise Against at that point in time, so that was pretty cool.
Yeah, no, Alkaline Trio have some of my favorite riffs, and that's why I'm kind of excited for the new Blink record, because I love Matt Skiba, and I heard that he's playing guitar on that record as well, like, he's not just doing vocals, and I don't know, there needs to be more, like, catchy riffs will never get old, in my opinion. Keep bringing them on, Andrew. I want more. I want more riffs.
I'm trying. It's really hard, man.
I don't know. That's what I think it is. I think it's riffs. I think it's catchiness. And I think it's vocals. Derek from State Champs has a terrific voice, and I think it's, you know, something that's, I think, set their band as a little bit different than the other bands touring right now. I think that's I think a lot of their success. That guy has a terrific voice.
And it sounds exactly the same live every night too.
Oh man, it's crazy like that. It's just unbelievable to see a band that played, like, I had them play Club Sod in Ottawa in front of like 50 kids, and then I see them sell out Opera House like a year and a half, like a couple years later. It's just amazing to see that happen, you know? And, you know, Andrew, you know, they played, like, you guys played like Lunetta, and then you played Mavericks, right? Which was like double the size of the room in Ottawa. And I'm pretty sure the next time you play Ottawa, it will be a big room. So that there's obviously, you know, you guys are like Will, you said it right. They're clearly doing something right if they're, you know, getting to that point. And
Absolutely.
like Cartel is, you know, a very influential band for a lot of these bands, and I think it means a lot, you know, for them to hear stuff like that, because it's one of those things where when I started getting into music, you know, Cartel was one of those bands. I remember, you know, seeing the music video for Honestly on Fuse, I believe it was, and I was just like, man, this is awesome. But yeah, we'll wrap this up. Unfortunately, Pat couldn't come on a lot, but Pat, if you're listening, thanks for coming up a little bit, man. You gotta check out his show on Adobe Radio, and Pat, I'm sure he's gonna I'm sure he's gonna want to have you on. So
That'd be sick.
So hopefully you can get in touch with him on Twitter or Facebook, because that would be a really cool thing for you to do for sure. And he's amazing, and everyone should like watch his show. And he asks very good questions. That's why I wanted to ask him more about that, but he got cut off. But I think his questions, because asking questions is a tough thing, right? Like I have a hard time picking up the good questions, and I'm a big fan of what he does. But Andrew, thanks a lot for coming on. Will, thank you guys. Closing remarks very quickly, Andrew.
I just want to say thanks for having me. Hopefully we can do it again sometime.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good to meet you, Will, over the internet.
We'll have you on when we have that Boston Bruins player that likes your band.
Oh, that would be sick.
I don't want to like spoil anything. Yeah, I just love the fact that like you say, what song do you like, and then he like replies. I just find that like that's pretty. Like you guys tweeted something like, "What do you want to hear on tour?"
Oh yeah. And he was
yeah.
fun.
Yeah, no, it's cool. Ryan's a good guy, but yeah, Will, anything you want to say?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I love doing this stuff. It's very cool.
Yeah.
It was nice to meet all of you. Andrew, especially, like when you guys come through the States, I'll have to definitely come check you guys out.
Cool.
And I will be listening to your tunes now after we get finished.
Great.
Have you heard of Seaway before this show?
Yeah, I've heard a couple of songs here and there. I mean, I think there was Nick from Hit the Lights had told me about you guys.
Oh, okay. Cool.
That's another great band. I love that band. That last record they put out is great.
Yeah, we're touring with them in April. So.
Oh, sweet. Are you guys coming to Nashville?
Yeah. Is that where you live?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
I will see you there.
Awesome. There you go.
There it is.
That's really cool. All right, guys. Well, this has been Popternative. Thank you very much for coming on. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Will. Thank you, Pat. You know, you can follow us on Twitter at Popternative and like us on Facebook at Popternative. You can catch replays if you missed the show on our YouTube and SoundCloud pages. So thank you guys and have a great night.
Thank you for tuning in to Popternative. Make sure to check out our past episodes of Popternative on YouTube. Be sure to like Popternative on Facebook and follow us on Twitter.